This podcast is a podcast of another spiritual dream that I had that I believe is also in reference to God using me to preach on the subject of divorce and remarriage. This dream I had, I believe it was over 5 years ago. I don't think it was quite 6. About 5.5 years ago. And in the dream, I went to school. And while at school, we participated in a military simulation. So it wasn't real fighting or warfare, but it was meant to be a simulation of it, like kind of like training and practice. And in the dream, there was 2 teams. They were split into 2 teams, and we had to fight against each other. And the team that I was on, I was one of the leaders. There was a group of leaders for our team, and I was one of them. In the dream, it was not an issue of me pretending to be a leader. It was an established fact that I was a leader. That was part of the dream. And I had a meeting with the other leaders just before we began this simulation where we discussed what strategy to use. And I articulated to them the strategy that I thought should be used. And when I did that, they all rejected what I said. They ignored it. They wouldn't even consider it at all. It was like a knee-jerk reaction. Just, we're not doing any of that. And they turned their faces away from me. They kind of did this thing where they turned their faces away from me. And they would not do anything I suggested. They completely ignored it. And they even did not view me as a leader like them. Even though I was a leader, they viewed me as not a leader like them. It's like they didn't respect me in that way at all. And then we started this military simulation. And even though my side, the team I was on, the leaders did not take my advice, they totally ignored it. Our team initially looked like it was winning. And in the dream, when I saw that the team I was on was winning, even though they would not take my advice, I was jumping up and down and rejoicing and cheering them on, very much trying to, do my part with it if I could. They wouldn't let me, pretty much, but that's what I did. And then I noticed that our team, because we fought against another team on a battlefield shaped like a donut. And also other things about the stream. The military simulation was so realistic that at times it was difficult to tell whether it was just a simulation or whether it was in fact real warfare. It was that graphic and real, experiencing it. So this battlefield was shaped like a donut, and the team that I was on had the vast majority of all their forces on their front line, and they were pushing against the other team, gaining ground. They appeared to be winning. And I looked in the rear, and I noticed that they had hardly anything there at all. And I then had a meeting with the leaders and told them, I said, hey, you're really weak here in the rear. If the enemy attacks there, you're going to lose. They're going to beat us there. So what we need to do is keep a force in reserve closer to there, and that way if they come attack there, then that can reinforce the rear, and then we'll be able to withstand that. And the leaders listened to what I said, and they would not They did not accept it. They did the same thing as before. They rejected it like a knee-jerk reaction. They would not consider it even for a second, and they did this like head-turning thing like that when they talked with me, and they also once again they viewed me as not a leader like them. Like, why do we even need to take seriously what this guy says? He's not a leader like us. But in the dream, I was a leader like them. They just didn't recognize me as that. So after this meeting where they, again, completely rejected my advice, then the opposing force took a portion of their army, went all the way around the donut-shaped battlefield, and attacked our team in the rear. Totally routed it with ease, and then advanced to where our front line was and sandwiched our forces in between both their sides. And we lost disastrously. The team I was on lost disastrously. And that was the end of the dream. So I only want to interpret this dream to a limited extent because I'm pretty certain I know exactly what this dream is referring to, and because that might not reflect well on some people who I was around in the past, I don't want to be very explicit. I'm not interested in, pointing my finger and wagging it at anybody. And all the videos I've had so far, I don't name names on anything. I just refute false doctrine, but I don't say this or that person is promoting it, even though I know perfectly well which ones are. That's on purpose. I don't wish any of these people any ill. It's not like I just want destruction on them or something like that. I don't. Quite frankly, the people in my dream here that I'm referring to now, that I think, represented the team and the leaders, I care a lot about those people, and I am not interested in insulting them, putting them down, or, just being harsh with them at all. I'm pretty sure that dream is in part referring to divorce and remarriage. I believe it's actually referring to birth control and divorce and remarriage. Birth control is another subject that I will probably make a series of videos on as well. I actually consider birth control to be, I consider it to be Satan's greatest victory with the church in the U.S. And I believe that the first part of that dream was in reference to birth control, and that the latter part was in reference to divorce and remarriage, with some specific incidents that I experienced in my life after that dream took place. In the dream, it was kind of like my giant slayer dream. Nobody agreed with me. Nobody would join me. Nobody sided with me. In the dream, I was the only person who was correct. In this dream that I had here about the military simulation, that was the whole point of the dream, was that I alone was the one who assessed the situation correctly, and everyone else got it wrong. Which some people might think, well, that sounds kind of prideful, but let me tell you, when you're experiencing these things and you're led by the Holy Spirit, you know exactly what the Holy Spirit's viewpoint is because he point blank tells you. And then you don't see other believers around you kind of coalescing and supporting that. You don't well up with pride in those situations. Instead, you feel kind of humble and broken. You feel very grieved. You feel sorrowful that it's like that. And you don't usually just think, oh, I'm some high and mighty person. That's not usually what's going through. It's actually painful to go through things like that. It doesn't feel good. It feels good when everybody agrees with you and they accept you. When they don't accept you and they don't agree with you, that doesn't feel good. So it's not a prideful issue. I look at things like I need to be willing to suffer for the gospel. And if I'm not willing to do that, then it's not a correct attitude. It's not an attitude that's pleasing and honorable to God. He laid down his life for us, and he expects us to love him back by surrendering our lives to him. And that means that he uses us for his purposes, even if it's painful. And you have to be willing to suffer. Just like Jesus' suffering on that cross is an act of love, you have to be willing to suffer as an act of love back to God. Suffering in the promotion of the gospel and living a godly and honorable life. And it would be wonderful if everybody did that in total unison and in agreement, but in my experience, that's not what usually takes place. Instead, the more closer you get to God, the more surrendered your life becomes. You hit a point where, unfortunately, a lot of people around you may not agree with you, even though they're Christians. When you're a young Christian, usually what God's telling you, almost everyone around you agrees with, who's a Christian. But when you're a more mature believer, you run into situations where sometimes they don't. And God still expects you to obey him, even though someone else, could even be someone in authority over you, doesn't agree with you. So I'll stop this video with that here.